And we're live in just a second. Yes, we're live, Jen.
All right, fantastic. Would you send that link out to make sure everybody has it?
Yes.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the confusion. We are here now, and we are live. I am inviting you into this conversation about the sidewalk experiment and what you experimented with according to this quote. The what informs and the why transforms. What is it that you've been thinking about, and what have you been trying and playing with those two prompts? So this one and this one, go ahead and chat through that with your lab group, and we'll get all on the same page here in about 2 minutes. So I think that these are opportunities for reflection. Did you find something that you already knew, or did you dive into something that was unknown to you? And then how did you reflect on it? Not judging yourself or other people, but just what is it that struck you with these kinds of experiments? If you did them, that's interesting. And if you didn't choose to do them, that's interesting too. There's something that can be learned and understood from both of those ways of being and those choices that you made. And so now I'd like you to take a close look at this image and just see what comes up for you. What are you drawn to in the image? Sometimes thoughts come up as assessments or judgments, but just what draws you in or doesn't draw you in to this picture? What does it make you feel? So just take a few notes on your page for today. And if you're feeling so inclined, you can drop a few words into the Zoom chat where you are. Just what's highlighted for you, and why do you think that part jumps out to you? This entire course really is about reflection and connection. And most of our current education system, very likely what most of you have been through, is about answers. Not your answers necessarily, but what you have learned as answers to regurgitate on the test. And that's not what this course is about. This course is about looking a little deeper into you and making connections as humans. As humans, we are scientists. We are asking the questions. We are experimenting. And then how does that connect to the world around us, particularly to the environment, which includes absolutely everything? So this image might affect us all differently. It probably does affect us all differently. And so it's really thinking about what does your observation say about you? As you sit with and spend time with and are in relationship with questions, more emerges. So here's a question for you to reflect on in this moment. So what is water? This is an opportunity. I'm going to give you a couple minutes in your groups to dive into this. Just go around the room, and maybe what's the first thing that comes to you about what is water? And TAs, I would love to have a few of these dropped in the chat if you have the opportunity to do that. So. So I have some really great answers. I love what's coming in over the chat right now. People are saying water is sustenance and life. People have good memories connected to the water. It's necessary for life to thrive. It makes up everything natural. It means rebirth in a religious sense. Somebody said, we are water. Purity, it's 70% of what makes up our body. Survival and clean. Water is unpredictable. Water is life. Water is home for animals. Water is a drink. It is absolutely all of those things. And so, what if we consider, somebody said, water is one of the ways we are connected to everything around us. It's in every living thing. And so there are other people that have mixed feelings about water, and that totally makes sense. I'd like to propose right now that that water is a teacher. How could water teach? What could water teach us? So look at that. Look how I can get it all shaken up. And then it comes to stillness again. And so when we have those distressing thoughts and worries that get us all shaken up, what can bring us back to stillness is slowing down and taking those deep breaths. Opening on the in breath and releasing all of the shakeup on the out breath. It brings us to presence. It brings us to stillness, just like water. And so water can be our teacher. It fills any vessel perfectly. It's in this right now. It's in my mug right now. It's in this glass right now, and it fits every vessel. And so, how can we be more like water? So, continuing to think about what happens when we think outside of the usual is what this class is about. You may have seen that it's titled Dualism. What is dualism? Dualism is the two sides, the black and the white. It's the either or thinking. It's a way of seeing in the world. It's actually a way of seeing that might actually block us from seeing other ways in the world. So we're going to experience some dualism. So here is one image, and you might just drop into the chat what you see in this picture. Take it in. And some of you may have seen this before. So is it that you see two young women talking, or is it that you see a younger woman and an older woman talking? So there's the one young woman here in the sort of the background, and then here, if this is the younger woman, this is her nose right here, and this is her chin that goes down around the bottom. She's wearing a choker necklace right here, and this is her ear. So if that's the younger woman that you see, some of you might see the older woman, in which case this is the older woman's eye, and this is her nose that goes down below, and that where the choker was, that's her mouth. And so you might see that, and now you can flip them. You can see if you can make your eyes perceive both pictures, both images. What we see and understand affects our thoughts and our feelings, our perceptions of how we take in the world around us. And when we consider dualism, it's important to acknowledge as scientists, all of us, that there are biases in our research because of what we're seeing and what we're taking in from the world around us. So check out this one. This is called a Fraser circle. Has the illusion of spiraling, but it's not spiraling, actually. It's a series of concentric circles that go all the way into the middle and all the way out to the edge. So it's not actually spiraling, but that's what our eyes see. That's what our perception is. And so when I think about how I could broaden my perception of what's happening in the world around me, that sort of engenders a certain amount of humility when I think, oh yeah, cool, spiral, and then realize it's not. Or when I think that I understand a situation clearly, and in reality, I don't get it at all. So as our final way into this, I would like you to put your finger up. Put your finger up above your head, and looking up at your fingertip, make your finger spiral in a clockwise direction. So everybody can be doing this, and on Zoom it's super cool. Nobody might, maybe nobody's watching, and you can experiment with this. So you're spiraling in this clockwise direction over your head, and keep spiraling that finger all the way down, and now it should be like parallel to your eyes. Keep spiraling, and now keep bringing it down, and you're still spiraling exactly as you were, and now you're looking down on your finger, and your finger is going counterclockwise. You didn't switch directions. It's just that your perception changed. You can do it again if you want to see. It's kind of fun to experiment with. But it's all about our perception. And that's what dualism is. And so I proposed to you today that we think outside of the either or kind of thinking and try on what it's like to be in a world of both and. So, dualism, it's a deeply ingrained Western habit, not so much of an Eastern tradition, but a Western tradition that predisposes us to divide reality into this or that. So it might be attractive or unattractive, valuable or worthless. It might be we either believe in God or we don't. It might be that we're Republican or that we're Democrat. It might be that we're white or black, male or female, guilty, not guilty. And so with that dividing so dramatically in that either or place, our lives might become simplistic or dogmatic or fundamentalist in a way that's not serving us as human beings. So, what if rather than mostly an either or world, what if we were to try living into an existence that's mostly both and what would this really mean? So you look at this yin yang symbol, it's so familiar to us, but what it really is getting at is that it reminds us that there are not very distinct separate categories that we might imagine, that there's always something that's carrying over to the black or to the white. The more that we think we know, the less we really know. And I know this is tough, and I know that you might be asking, why is this part of this class? But as we move forward, thinking about how we're going to solve and be part of the solution for an environmental crisis, we need to be able to think about ways of being that open up our minds to all sorts of answers and creativity and expansion. And so that's why we're talking about dualism. Is climate change happening? Some people say, yeah, heck yeah. And some people are like, nope, not happening. And so that's a perfect example of this dualistic thinking. So we need to be able to hear people and live our way in to the both and examples. So take a moment now. I know this can be tricky. So take a minute and just sort of break out in your Zoom rooms and talk about what's happening, what's coming up for you right now. And then we're gonna continue to dive in a little bit more. So take a moment and just sit with this and chat in your group. So here we are. We're going to dive a little deeper now. So, thinking about these dyads, two things that are parallel, um, up, down, rich, poor, they seem like opposites, right? So, success, failure, generous, selfish. So, if you're game, you can explore these a little bit farther by examining these word pairs and then choosing which word belongs to the in the superior column and which one in the inferior column. So take a moment and try that. See what comes up for you. So if you marked up as superior and down as inferior, you're not alone, I'm sure. But is up really superior? It might seem like it. I mean, the words that we use, things are looking up. The music is upbeat. I'm up for it. She brightens up the room. They can all of these expressions and more lead to the idea that help us to associate up with being superior to down, with up being good and desirable. But obviously, this is just a cultural overlay. Um, Up isn't superior to down. The concepts need each other. For without up, there is no down, and vice versa. There wouldn't be any way of distinguishing upstairs and downstairs, or uptown for downtown, uphill and downhill. And so it's a matter of perspective. So in this case that you might say, well, rich is definitely superior to poor. Poor is definitely inferior. But if you were to travel a bit and live among the poor of this world, you might be surprised to discover that the poor are often superior to the rich in terms of common sense and generosity, openness, compassion, cleverness, and more. So take a moment and as you look at these dyads, find a pairing that is most difficult for you to flip like this. Or if you come up with another one, clean versus dirty might be another one. Best versus worst. Create something that is hard for you to flip in this way. And now I'd like to have you spend time in your Zoom rooms, either talking as a big group or talking in pairs about that challenge and see if other folks can help with your flip or with this whole concept if you're wrestling with that. So take 3 minutes now and get together on that. So I hope that you're diving into this. And I just want to clarify and point out that none of this is to say that dualism is categorically bad. That would be ironic, right? But when dualism carries over to our beliefs, edging us toward fundamentalism or narrow mindedness, when we see only one option or the right way to do things, then our freedom of thought is compromised. We can't do those experiments as human beings because of the bias that we carry. Um, and so, this is why we dive into the dualism. I'd like you to take in this story. Psychologist Martha Beck tells a story from her youth about the crippling effects of dualism. She says, when I was in college, every few weeks I'd join this or that group of artists, and we'd all pitch in a few dollars to rent a studio and hire a model. Most of the people we got to pose were college students with bodies that matched the social ideal: slender, fit, perfectly proportioned. And then one day we got somebody really different. She looked well over 60 with a deeply lined face and a body that was probably 50 pounds heavier than our doctors would have liked. Shining purple welts from a cesarean section and knee surgery cut deep rifts in the rippled adipose fat of her lower body. Another scar ran across one side of her chest where her left breast once had been. And when she limped onto the podium to pose, I felt so much pity and unease that I physically flinched. But we were there to draw her, so I picked up my pencil. The thing about drawing is that you can't do it well with your social self. You have to bring out your essential self, which doesn't know anything about social stereotypes. And so as I began to draw this maimed old woman, the most amazing thing happened. Within 5 minutes, she became a person of absolutely wondrous beauty. She didn't look like a supermodel, and she didn't have to. Her body, in and of itself, was as beautiful as a piece of polished driftwood, or a wind-carved rock, or a waterfall. My essential self didn't know that I was supposed to compare the woman to various movie stars any more than it would have evaluated the Andes Mountains by judging how much they looked like an Iowa cornfield. It simply saw her as she was, an exquisite sculptural form. When this perceptual shift happened, I was so surprised that I stopped drawing and I simply stared at her. She seemed to notice this, and without turning her head, she looked straight into my eyes. And then I saw the ghost of a smile flicker across her face, and I realized something else. She knew she was beautiful, and she knew that I'd seen it. Knowing that a room full of artists couldn't draw her without seeing her, I mean, really seeing her, she may have decided to give us a gentle education about her perceptions, about our perceptions. So for the young Beck, it was her separation of human bodies into attractive versus unattractive that initially blocked her from truly seeing the person on the podium. It was her story had trapped her to seeing the woman as old and maimed and pathetic. But then everything shifted when she started to draw what she saw, free of cultural overlays. It was then that she was able to see the uniqueness of the human form on the podium. And it should also be noted that the woman played a key role in Beck's transformation, insofar as she was fully at home in her own skin, liberated from the shackles of social structures and standards. She experienced herself fully enough, just as she was. So how can letting go of dualism help us? What about the time we're in right now? What do you see as the dualism of quarantine, the dualism of COVID-19? One that I keep thinking about is, it's time to get back to normal. versus what is the opportunity for something new? So thinking about my thinking, take a moment and put into your group chat any others. There are a whole lot of dualistic ways of thinking and being during this time. So if one comes up for you, pop it into the chat. And TAs, if you see something that I should see, pass it along. So this will be our experiment to think about this for the next few days, and we'll talk about that again, bring it back around again on Monday. So write this down, this quote from Byron Katie. The only thing worth learning is how to unlearn. And the way to do this is to question everything you think you know. So someone put in the chat, strong versus weak. What does that really mean? Sanity versus insanity. Taking time for yourself versus giving time to others. So questioning things leads us to personal freedom and connection. Admitting ignorance and opening to discovery. So some of you have had your questions flagged in Packback because the artificial intelligence algorithm flags a question as being closed-ended. So when I asked you this question, what is fire? The artificial intelligence pegs that question as close-ended. But now, when we think about dualism and opening to discovery, is it a close-ended question? There's a dualism for you, a dyad, humans versus artificial intelligence, for your consideration. Thanks for being here with us, and I look forward to being back with you again soon. Have a lovely day. Everything okay, Valerie?
Yeah, I'm hoping Pedro can either stay after or send me some information about how he went about fixing that or doing what he did. Yeah, I definitely need to know how to do that.